And Maine is one of the many states where voters are heading to the polls to cast their ballot on this Super Tuesday. All polling locations are now open. Republicans and other unenrolled voters will have 5 candidates whom they can vote for to represent them in the next presidential election. The Republican ballot will include former President Donald Trump, Nikki Haley, Ryan Binkley, and Ron DeSantis and Vivek Ramaswamy. On the Democratic presidential ballot, voters will be able to choose between incumbent President Joe Biden and Dean Phillips. Unenrolled voters can choose between the Republican ballot or the Democratic ballot once they arrive at the polls, as this year marks the first semi-open primary in the state. Voters enrolled in the Libertarian, Green Independent, or No Labels parties can't vote in this primary because those parties don't have presidential candidates in Maine. The deadline to change your party has already passed.